Y'all, Wizard101 just put out their first spell teasers for the upcoming WALLARU update. This is like a gigantic deal because this is stuff that I feel like the community has been following, like, you know, with bated breath. The theme of today is healing. The context of this healing has been broken in PvP for the past like 40 days, and they finally teased what they're gonna do to fix it, hopefully. Now, the images you're about to see are from Rapbeard Stream. He's one of the devs that works on this game. He's gonna be linked in the description. This is huge, y'all, so let's get right into it. Starting off kind of light, we have the new Goat Monk. Now, Goat Monk in live realm right now does about 500 damage, and it also heals for 660 HP. This spell is way more healing than hit. A lot of people, because of how much the healing was actually doing, they could literally hit through infections and out damage their opponent when you counted the amount that they got from the heal from it. This was like a ticket into literally just staying at full HP the whole game. Now, it looks like the actual healing has been reduced by over 200 HP. So even at max tier, the new Goat Monk will only do 435 healing. Now, that's the only change they're doing to Goat Monk. They've actually affected the other spells in much more significant ways. It's crazy to say this, but out of all the nerfs that we're going to be talking about today, Goat Monk is probably the smallest one. Now, what they did to Hungry is much, much more significant. I'm surprised that they didn't do this the other way around, but the heal that they actually removed from Hungry Caterpillar is much, much more than what they did with Goat Monk. Hungry and Goat Monk are essentially very similar spells, except one requires 2 shads, the other one requires a life pip. But in live realm right now, Hungry Caterpillar does about, I want to say like 850 damage, and then it does a 640 heal over time. They made the heal portion of this only 310. Now, I actually love this because frankly, hit and heals were broken. I don't think anyone is disputing that. A normal setup without any outgoing on a pet can literally go up to 85 outgoing. So yeah, I feel like reducing some of the heals that you could do through infects while acting offensively, that's probably a good idea. It's a pretty significant nerf, but maybe what that would mean is there's other shads that people will consider using. I don't think it's actually that crazy now to think about using maybe like, you know, Wings of Fate. Yes, it's weaker, but it's still gonna be a very significant heal, and it's also gonna be like an overtime, right? So I feel like people are just gonna shift over to this, and I don't know how I feel about it. I mean, it's, I guess, you know, the one thing that they haven't teased that they're changing that is a heal. I feel like people are just gonna pivot to this, especially the ones that have literally just been stalling with Hungry to begin with. Kind of a weird move. I feel like it's just like removing one broken thing and it's gonna just be replaced with another. I would assume they would need to do something similar to this, but there doesn't seem to be evidence that they are changing Wings of Fate. Now, the next couple of changes are probably the things that people have been looking for. Basically, the big issue in PvP right now is that if you're going against a life, they already have a ton of HP, right? You wait all these rounds now for these 2 Shadow Pip hits that are basically your main source of damage until maybe you're lucky enough to set up a Gambit. And what do they do in response? They do one of 2 things that can literally cancel out your shad. They can do a regenerate, which that 420 health with the amount of outgoing that's available to you is basically just an immediate heal, and then there's 5 rounds of crazy healing followed up by it. And I would argue to a larger degree, Pigsy is just a burst heal. It's more burst than not. They banned other burst heals, quote unquote, like Satyr, because they knew that a problem would arise where someone would just wait to get shatted, and then they would literally just do a burst heal and then hit themselves. And I guess while some heals did get banned, some of them didn't, and they were basically just used like crazy in order to stay in a game for a prolonged period of time. These spells, Pigsy and Regenerate, existing as they do right now, all it does is it lets you not have to take any risks as a life and literally just sit on your ass defending and healing off shads and hitting once in a blue moon until you manage to finish off the game in like an hour and a half. They changed these spells massively. If you might notice, right, next to the Pigsy that you see on your screen, this teaser suggests 2 things that happen. One, a lot more of the heal is no longer, you know, in the initial part. It's on the overtime part. That's counterable by spells like Skeletal Pirate. That's also counterable by spells like Triton. Are you going to be using more pips to counter than the spell is worth? Yes, but they address the issue by capping it at 4 uses, and you can't reshuffle it back into your deck. I've never seen so many restrictions put on a card before, but honestly, y'all, I think it was needed. The same thing is being done with Regenerate. More of the heals being moved over to the OT, and there's now copy limits. That little 4 little dots there, that means I can put 4 regens in my main deck, and even if I were to reshuffle, I won't see them again later. I think the only way to reshuffle and then have a regenerate or a Pigsy in your deck from now on is if you just don't use it before that first reshuffle. That means that once you use this direct heal, it's officially out of play for that, that card is out of play for the game, which I think is a really cool concept. That means that there's some very, very generous endpoint to when a life wizard going against maybe another life or maybe even another slow school, there's an endpoint to a game that's now set. You can't just reshuffle and heal forever. Now, I would argue being able to put 4 regenerates and 4 Pigsies still lets you heal a lot. I've gone against people that use a similar amount of heals to that, and the only reason their playstyle would be any different is because after they reshuffle, they can't keep up that pace anymore. But you can still expect very, very long games. I'll be honest, I still think that the OT component of heals that you just do on yourself, like regenerate and Pigsy, I still feel like they're very high. I guess time will tell if they're broken or not. Now, one early controversy that's already crept up is that you might notice, right? Pigsy, there's already an availability of spellments. If you have gold keys, you can actually farm these very easily. If you're in Live Realm right now, you might notice that Regenerate doesn't have a spellment pad. That's because these are going to be new spellments that you have to use in order to get it all the way up. And the teaser that you see on Regenerate, you might notice the base version of the spell is going to start as no PvP, and you need to do 75 spellments worth of upgrading, and these are only going to drop from doing Beast Moon. That's kind of crazy, because I feel like this is now the second spell recently where the base version of the spell is no PvP. One of my major gripes with Catch of the Day is, let's say you wanted to learn this on, like, you know, any wizard. Not only do you need the spellments to learn the spell, you also have to upgrade it with 75 more spellments just in order to, like, actually, like, be able to use it in PvP. So you need over 100 spellments just to, like, learn the spell at its base most useless form in PvP. Regenerate, not only do you need 75 spellments to use it, but now you have to do Beast Moon. It's a whole extra side activity. I'm gonna be biased. I actually never did Beast Moon until about a year and then some ago. It wasn't really hard to get into. I think the people that are acting like Beast Moon is the worst thing to do for spellments, I think you're overreacting. But I do think it's a weird continuation of a pattern. I don't really think that the base version of the spell should ever be no PvP because it creates more barriers of entry. I don't mind at all that you can upgrade it with Beast Moon. I actually think there should be more things you can upgrade with Beast Moon. That's not a bad thing. It's not like these upgrades make a big difference. You're gaining, like, I want to say like 100 HP by the time you upgrade it fully. That's not a big deal. But the usability of the spell should not be predicated on whether you do a side activity or not. I think that's a big deal. We'll see if they change it. If not, it's not a crazy big deal. You barely even need Regenerate to life PvP. I know, shocker, but it's true. Life is a very good school with or without Regenerate. I'm just gonna be honest. And the final spell change is actually a Storm one. They're also reducing the heal on Dark and Stormy. Now, there is no mention of a change to Berry, which makes me very nervous because Life can dual school into Storm, learn Berry's Surprise, and just spam it the way they used to spam Goat Monk. They'll do way less damage, thankfully, so I guess that's a plus. But if you're trying to heal through infections, I feel like now a life can just go into Storm, which is weird because you would think the opposite would be true. But yes, Dark and Stormy, which right now heals for over 1,000, it's going to be healing for a little over 800. Honestly, not a big nerf. I actually think that Storm doesn't really need that many changes. I'm glad they didn't nerf it like crazy. But this might be the first update where stalling with heals might actually be much more difficult to do than not. I'm not saying you won't see matches that get stalled out. I'm sure someone will find some way to do it. People always seem to know. But the fact that copy limits are being used to address stalling gameplay is very interesting. Does that mean that we're going to see copy limits instituted on other spells that are used to stall, like Mana Burn? Are we going to see copy limits on spells like Threefold? People use Darkmoor decks right now. These give 10 copies of your school, and people just use these to spam Threefolds. It would be nice if they could be copy restricted at like 4 or 6 or whatever, considering you could also put Threefolds in TCs and you can make pets that give item card Threefolds. I'm curious what other incentives they're gonna add in a way where the meta is pushed towards actually moving the game forward instead of literally doing the same thing over and over again. That's been my biggest issue, whether it's heal spamming, weakness spamming, trap spamming, you name it, it's all spam. And to an extent, I get why someone would spam something that's beneficial to them. Obviously, if you just want to rank up, I totally get it. But I just don't think it makes for a vibrant or fun meta to play. And it's led for me to be burnt out with the meta. I'm glad they're pushing against it even a little bit. All things considered, whatever they do with copy limits, just remember the fact that you have an entire sideboard that will probably never be restricted by copy limits. It's the freest thing you could ever ask for in terms of deck building. So there will always be spam strats, I feel like. You know, even if they do main deck copy limits, the only difference is you can't just reshuffle and continue a spam strat if someone outplays you. And I'm not sure that I'm against that, you know? Like, I'm gonna see how it feels when healing is copy limited and seeing if I'm actually staying on top of people's heals and manage to get a reshuffle. Is the game going to shift in my favor unless they also play offensively? Is that going to happen? And could that same principle be applied to any stalling strat, to the point where stalling strats end in Wiz? All in all, y'all, big healing changes. I think life wizards are probably not going to be happy if they main it. But honestly, you have tons of things you can do on a life that people haven't even tried. So there's no guarantee that life is actually getting nerfed, or it's going to not be the best school next meta either. That's the crazy part. That's how good the school really is. So time will tell. I would love to hear y'all's opinions on all the changes. That is, I want to say 5 different spell teasers that they released today. And they're all nerfs. They're all nerfs to healing. It seems like finally we're getting some changes to one of the worst metas ever when it comes to stalling. Keep in mind, as always, that if you're not a PvP player, there's PvP and no PvP paths to every spellment. You won't get affected by this change if you don't interact with PvP or raids at all. I would love to hear y'all's opinions on the actual changes, though. Drop a comment, let me know what you guys think. Drop a like if you're new, drop a sub if you're new, and as always, if somebody hasn't told you you're awesome today, they doing something wrong, stay awesome. See y'all soon, and yeah.